Awesome. Okay. Hello, and welcome to the Music Publishing Podcast. I'm here today with pianist Kathleen Supove. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, this is fun. For those of you who don't know, Kathy, like I mentioned, is a wonderful pianist. She's in New York City. I've known of you at the very least since I was in undergrad, in the in the middle of a cornfield in Illinois. So your reputation has precedes you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, and all of that?
Sure, absolutely. But first, I just want to say that I'm very envious that you were out in the cornfields, like thinking about something like this, because I love cornfields.
They're nice on occasion, but to be there for 22 years is a little excessive.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's true. Well, glad you're in New York now. We can get into this later because I have strong feelings about New York, which is not to say I don't like other places a lot, but well, let's see about what I do. Well, what I do is I'm always looking for new music that's coming on the scene. It can vary, but I'm always looking for something provocative and challenging in some way. And I was going to say virtuosic, but virtuosity can take different forms. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be fast and loud to be virtuosic. It could be a virtuosity of focus, attention span, emotion, various things like that. And I tend to look for new things, though I do a few things that currently exist. But I would say the bulk of what I do has perhaps been written for me.
Nice.
And I started life as a classically trained pianist pretty late in life. I was almost 9, actually, which is for a professional pianist is actually rather late. And I did a kind of normal thing for a few years, about 4 years, and it was going all right. And my dad had always wanted a daughter that was a pianist, so there was a little bit of pressure there. And but I was a little bit lukewarm about it. But at some point, my dad took me to a teacher in Portland named Lessa Scott Keeney. And she agreed to take me. I think my other teacher had gotten sick and was maybe out for a month or something. Okay. And this was our escape window of opportunity or something. And he just took me to her, and she told me later that he said to her, you will teach her, sort of like, not could you teach her or something, you will teach her. And I mean, what can I say? He was he was a Russian, strict, gloomy Russian Dostoevsky kind of father. And but she not only taught me classical, but she turned me on to kind of light classics, sort of jazzy arrangement kind of things, and Gershwin and Slaughter on 10th Avenue and those kind of things. And I really took to those. Oh, she was also a protege of a guy named Dent Mowry, who had been a student of Debussy.
Oh, nice.
And he also wrote piano music for students, and she had me play a lot of his music. Okay. And it was also kind of, it was sort of from the romantic tradition, but a little bit kind of light classic-y. And I really took to this, and that's when I kind of really flipped for playing, and the playing took off. But it was a combination of classical and this. But I think something about that opened my eyes or opened my ears to a more contemporary sound. And so I got to college. I did my undergrad at Pomona College. It's a liberal arts school in Southern California. Really wonderful place. It also had a really good contemporary music department.
Oh, nice.
And that's when I heard the piece that got me hooked on, oh, I get it, there's new music, there's new concert music, was what's now kind of an older piece, but it was Schoenberg Opus 25, piano pieces, and I'd really never been exposed to anything like that. I didn't know who Charles Ives was. I'd never heard The Rite of Spring, anything like that. So I saw this piece and I thought, oh, that's really wild that you could have a conventional dance form but put different kinds of notes in it that, sort of fill it with contemporary sounds. And anyway, I just thought that was tremendous. So that was another key point along the way. So, okay, time passes. I graduate Pomona. I go to Juilliard as a master's student. And there I kind of went back to finishing up or sweeping up the floor from things that I'd kind of missed out on classical music-wise. And sometime there, I discovered through a couple of friends a pianist named Russell Sherman, who had played contemporary music but also played traditional music. And I went and heard him, and that was another flip moment. And I went to Boston and worked with him for a while. And I would say, in terms of pedagogy for me, I really learned most of what I know now or can do now at the piano from him. So, but along the line, I think once I got out of the whole I'm a student thing, I really wanted to do contemporary music. And by that time I knew some composers. And I think I just thought that I didn't want to be the 300th person playing a Beethoven sonata. There's nothing like being at Juilliard to convince you of that. That every practice room has somebody playing absolutely fabulously, and it's probably even more true now. And it didn't interest me in quite the same way. I thought that there you were just living to a performing tradition that already existed, whereas if you had a new piece and didn't know what to do with it, you had to create your own performing tradition.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started on it. When I first started, I played things by contemporary composers that were around, and some of them in Europe, some of them in America. I met a few composers who had suggested things, and they were by and large older than I was. Then the people that were maybe my peers began to really come into their own as composers, and I started playing their work. They started writing things for me. So then I'm kind of doing music of my peers. And now, as I've gotten older, of course, there's a few generations of younger people have come up. So now there's this huge range of things to choose from. It's a little frightening. I mean, I'm frightened right now, even as I'm talking about it. How many things there are. I mean, for me, one of my wishes would be, it's right up there with immortality. Okay, 3 wishes, cosmic wishes. Immortality, maybe. Being 2 places at once. And being able to learn any piece of music instantly. So that would be, my 3 big wishes. So because there's so much out there.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm always looking. So that's basically what I do. And I had this idea when I first started playing concerts, really seriously playing concerts, that I wanted to have it be kind of like a series, so people would know it and always think that it had something predictable to offer, maybe not in terms of the actual content of the music, but they always knew they were going to get some kind of show. Maybe they were going to get new music that they hadn't heard of that would give them something to think about. And it would be presented in some kind of interesting way.
Yeah. You knew that there was a certain type of experience to expect. Maybe not, this is exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get this sort of a range of experience.
Yeah. And even if that included maybe not knowing what you were going to get.
Yeah.
So I had a friend that worked in advertising at that point. And she spends her whole life just sitting around coming up with names for things with a bunch of people. So I asked her, I said, could you try to think of some names for this kind of enterprise that I'm talking about? And she came up with like 200 names. And one of them was the Exploding Piano. And it's stuck ever since. So, and mostly because, people kind of giggle when they hear it, but also, I think the idea is maybe exploding notions that one might have about piano music, that one might have about piano recitals and
Hmm.
about music or what it might do. And that could go in a lot of different directions,
Yeah.
emotional, uh, political, theatrical,
Hmm.
whatever.
I remember, I think the first concert that I saw you in was an exploding piano concert, and I think there was a significant element, or at least one of the pieces, uh, dealt with body image. And I remember that being
Oh,
the themes in that concert.
oh, I think I know the one. Did I have an Abtronic and did I pass it out to the audience?
You
I,
did, you did.
yeah, I totally remember. It was at the Flea Theater. I totally
Yeah,
remember that concert. Yeah.
yeah.
I, st- I still have that Abtronic. And in fact, I took it to Sarasota with me last weekend. And I did something with high school
Mhm.
kids. There's a high school for the performing arts in Sarasota that's really wonderful. And I brought it. And of course, it looks, I mean, our sense of product has really gone through the roof. I mean,
Oh
this
yeah.
is like this rinky-dink little thing where, like, there's no question that it doesn't work. It couldn't possibly do anything. But I took it and I brought it and showed it, and they got quite a kick out of it and passed it around.
Nice. Yeah, I had known prior to, since I had sort of known who you were, and sort of what you know what um your style was in terms of presentation. I was really drawn to that when I went to that concert. That was a fun experience.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that. I gave a lot of thought to that show. I remember I borrowed a stroller for that show too from
Yeah.
someone, and walked off stage and left the stroller, and but a lot of the ideas come from the music. I mean, I think
Mhm.
that obviously I had led off the concert, I think, with Jakob TV's "The Body of Your Dreams," and
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think, yeah, because it's based on the infomercial for the Abtronic, and that's something that's been near and dear to me. That, I mean, we're not talking on a musical level now, but really uh, I consider the biggest achievement of my life to have been getting my weight under control and
Mm.
keeping it that way. It's above and beyond anything in music, actually.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
And I don't
pretty
think I've
unbelievable
ever
right
told anyone that before.
now. This is a very confessional podcast. It's fine.
I know. See what you brought out?
I know. Yeah, if the Abtronic worked, I'd be like, "Can I borrow it?"
Yeah, me too. Yeah, if only, right?
I know, right? If we could, yeah, there's wish number four, right? Just be at the right weight.
Oh, yes.
So what is your like curatorial philosophy when it comes to programming for the exploding piano? Do you have an idea that sort of runs through all of it, or is it more individual concerts with their themes?
Individual, yeah. Um, it could be, I would have answered something else maybe even a while back, but I think it does end up being very individual
Hmm.
because I would say that I tend to pick pieces that I believe in,
Hmm.
but oftentimes I've asked someone for a piece and I don't know what I'm going to get. And
Yeah.
so you have to take a little bit of a leap.
Hmm.
And then once the piece is there, you have to think about how you're going to present it.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's easier than other times, or something suggests itself, oh, that would be good grouped with
Hmm.
that. And what I try to avoid is a situation where I'm presenting a whole bunch of pieces, but they seem to not make any sense together.
Hmm.
And because it's not quite giving them the airing that they deserve, or
Hmm.
whatever. And I guess this has been on my mind lately because, like, I'm maybe facing that right now with something I'm trying to program. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to present that, and everything. So,
Yeah, this is something actually
um,
just in real time. I put out an episode with Mark Peliquin, who's
Oh
a
yeah.
longtime
Uh-huh.
collaborator of mine.
Yeah.
But for people who are listening in the future on the audio feed, will have been 2 weeks ago. And we talked a lot about curation and the ways that and we did talk actually about this idea of having pieces not really fit together. We mentioned those sort of marathon new music concerts that we're going to do as much as we can, but not put it all in a cohesive shape, or really worry about how things fit together and complement one another. So how would you, like, let's say, well, this program that you're
Well,
thinking of. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Well, no, I was going to ask you, when you discussed it, was it being discussed as a positive thing or not?
Generally
Something like
not.
not. Yeah.
One
Right.
thing that I think we kind of didn't say. I don't remember if I said this or not, but I know I thought it, and I wanted to get it out there, and I maybe didn't actually say it. It can be a wonderful thing for the performers and the composers in terms of having, like, we're assuming that it's a good performance, but it can be a wonderful thing to have, like, just have that on your resume, but also have a good archival recording that comes out of that can have a life beyond just the concert. But in terms of audience experience, and sometimes in terms of performer experience, it can be really tiring and very, like, just difficult to get
Uh,
through, you know?
yeah. Yeah. One of the things I'm taking a little detour here. Is that okay?
By all means, please.
Okay. I think I was thinking about this the other day because somebody had posted on Facebook. They said, "What would you think about a place?" Now I wish I could remember who it was. It was somebody I really like a lot and respect a lot. But anyway, they were talking about having a place where things could be presented in progress, and
Hmm.
from like every other week, or I forget, it was once a month or something
Hmm.
like that. Would you be interested in a place like that? And something about it was open to the public, and I was thinking that maybe there's a kind of a two-track thing here. Like, I mean, one of the things I've always thought that would be kind of interesting is to have a kind of open house
Hmm.
where you could do something like that marathon, but that people would have a sense that they could come and go, or that maybe they don't even have to be there, that it's not quite advertised that way.
Hmm.
And because my first thought was, oh my gosh, what are they talking about? There's already 5 times too many concerts in New York already. But I thought, no, but maybe there's a place for that,
Hmm.
and we would have to think about how to do that differently, or where to do that.
Hmm.
And actually, bringing this up has really got me thinking about it again.
I think
So,
something just I was just reading. Oh, there's a siren. Great.
oh,
Um,
that's in your neighborhood.
yep. That's for some reason there's a siren in Astoria. I was just reading a review today of it happened at Disney Hall. I think it was called Noon to Midnight, and they had a number of different
Yeah.
things that happened over that period of
Yep.
time. And I think that's a wonderful way of doing it, where it's
Uh,
different ensembles in a period of time, and you sort of know what they're going to do. I think that's a great way to do a marathon, rather than like a 3-hour concert where you're sort of locked in the hall.
yes.
and,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and there's frequently not booze on site, which really makes it the booze makes
Uh-huh.
it better. um,
Well, yeah. When I curated, this may come up in our conversation anyway, but I curated concerts at the Flea Theater
mhm,
for 6 years, I guess it was. And one of the things I really like about the Flea is when they present music things. Yeah, there's a little bar out there, and you can get a
mhm,
drink and bring it in. And contrary to what one would think, it actually makes the audience much more well behaved and
mhm,
quieter, because everybody's comfortable and
mhm.
relaxed, and they don't need to go anywhere. Whereas I go to a concert like in Tully Hall or some. I mean, you go to sometimes concerts where you're supposed to be really still. This is exactly the moment when people start to cough. They start to
Mhm,
rattle paper. They
mhm.
start to get in fights with each other. So,
Yeah.
and I also did want to give a shout out to that festival, that marathon in Los Angeles. I thought it was incredible. I mean, Los Angeles is getting, the new music scene there is getting poised to give New York a run for its money, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to see all the stuff happening out there. I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad I saw that article earlier, because I think that is like a really great way of doing like marathons.
Yeah. And to have, backing of, be on in the Disney Hall area, and
Yeah.
the various venues there are all really great. Terrific, and institutional support is kind of, especially in tough times, can be where it's at.
Oh yeah, totally.
Though I have mixed feelings about that. I went to something last night that reminded me kind of what, like an older era in New York, like maybe in the mid-90s, around the time I arrived, what it was like. And it was a venue called the Owl. It's in Crown Heights.
Okay.
And there was a group called Elysian Fields, which is a well-known group, and a group named Secret Sibling opened for them. And it was just fresh. They were so fresh. That Secret Sibling was so fresh and new, and it was discovering this new venue that I wouldn't even have realized existed, and it's really nice. And then Elysian Fields, that played so amazingly, and it was. I thought, oh yeah, this is why I'm here, and I to be reminded of that and feel fresh. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, that happens in small venues on the fringe. So
yeah,
it's good to have both, I guess.
Yeah, you have to have that diverse base of things that are happening.
Yeah, yeah.
So
anyway, so I was going to say that. So Exploding Piano goes on, and I think that the idea you asked about curating. I mean, I think I try to find composers I really like, and I try to stick with ones that I like. And depending on what's coming my way, I think the theatrical things I do are suggested by the music. I like to think, like I was talking about the stroller where I walked off stage with the stroller. That was because I remember I closed with a piece that Lucas Ligeti had written for me called Delta Space. And the end of it plays a track without me, just by itself. Yeah. It just runs off on its own. So I thought, well, rather than just sitting there while I do it, I was talking about the future or something like that. And I had this baby stroller, and I thought, well, what if I just walked away and left the baby stroller there, like the baby was kind of looking on, and that's the future there or something. I mean, it's sort of like, that's an example of how an idea would suggest itself based on something in the music.
Nice. So you do work with a lot of how to put this that doesn't sound weird. You've built relationships with a bunch of composers, and you return to them frequently.
Yeah, particularly some.
Yeah.
I would say that there are some on the list that I've worked with a lot. There's some I'd like to work with more. And yeah, I mean, the list isn't complete yet. There are many people that I would love to work. Anything that they wrote, I would love to play.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a fun way of like, you have this long-term relationship, and you get to really know that person's music, and they get to know your style of performing, and you can really just have a wonderful marriage of creative minds that way, with this long-term musical relationship.
I hope so. One hopes so. Yeah. That's really true. And I guess I should give a shout out. I mean, I could name a few people. Though, what happens if I omit? Sometimes I omit people unwittingly. When you threw your wedding, like, what if you forgot to invite your best friend? That kind of thing that happens to me sometimes. I forgot about this. But I guess I could single out my husband, Randall Wolf, who I've worked with a lot. I mean, he certainly would be on the list of people I've worked with the most. And I think he does make an attempt to bring whatever he's writing into what maybe my interests would be at that moment, or what my technical proclivities would be, that kind of thing. I think he's certainly tried to do that. And then some composers, like Frederick Shevsky, who I've played a lot, I think I would maybe search out things that had a certain kind of whatever it was I was looking for in his music. Like, I think I'm attracted to some of the earlier things and the virtuoso things, and which is not to say I'm not attracted to later things, but and then sometimes you have no idea what you're going to get. For some reason, again, I'm singling people out, but this is by no means the whole list. But like someone I'd like to work with again would be Matt Marks. And he's one of the people on my upcoming CD, which I know we're going to talk about. And I would love to do something else with him. And I don't know. I think he probably would, knowing him, I think he would probably do something that was compatible with some form of a shared insanity that we would have or something.
Nice. I haven't yet met Matt. We're Facebook friends. We've been in the same room a few times. We haven't actually had a conversation yet.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, maybe if I can do something to remedy that, I'll let you know.
Sounds good to me.
I think you would like each other.
Yeah, I suspect, seeing his Facebook posts, I think we'd get along quite well.
Yeah.
So you've done a fair amount of recording in your career.
Yes.
And obviously you have this new recording coming out that we'll talk about in a minute. What has been your general experience? What's your when you record, when you do a CD of your own, not like performing for somebody else, but doing your own CDs?
Yes.
What has been your experience there in terms of both the putting together, again, this sort of comes back a little bit to curation of putting that together artistically, but also putting the whole thing together practically, financially, getting it done. What's been your experience, and I'm sure that it's changed over the years.
Well, and it changes with each CD. I mean, it could be different. Well, I think all of them have, they've probably all taken longer than I imagined, without exception. And by the way, in terms of curation of the CD, the idea for the CD probably in each case came from me, but in some cases it was subject to some negotiation with who was putting it out. Depends on, in some cases it was, in some cases it wasn't. But in terms of getting it done, well, I think there's been, there was out-of-pocket expenditure in many cases. My very first solo CD was out-of-pocket quite a bit, and I'd never done a solo CD, and we had decided, Randy and I had decided that it was worth letting loose of some money because it was an investment, and at the time CDs were the sort of the medium of exchange. I mean, it wasn't like we had digital downloads and streaming and everything like now. So I spent a fair amount on that, and then I managed to luck out and get 2 big grants that paid all the money back. Oh, nice. So we had somehow learned to live around not having that money, and then got all this money back, which was such a windfall. That was sort of like a Cinderella fairy tale story. And I've gotten a couple of, the Copeland Foundation has a big grant, which is tremendously competitive. I think especially now. Yeah. It's really competitive. And their New Music USA certainly is a source. It's also very competitive.
Yeah, very.
A lot of it has come out of pocket. Some of it has come through in-kind services. I have a producer that I have a really close working relationship with, and social relationship with.
Mhm.
And I mean, I know that, if I were to die, I would die really owing him like probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in what he was really worth. And, but sometimes producers and editors will keep their price down. I remember when I did this first CD, it was with Judy Sherman.
Mm.
And I certainly knew about her, but I'd never really dealt with her.
Mhm.
And I remember talking to her on the phone, and she told me what her prices were. And it seemed very, I wouldn't say low, but it was extremely reasonable. It was lower than other people who I had no idea who they were or anything. And I actually said to her, I said, it's so reasonable. Can I ask you, like, what's the catch or why? And she laughed and she said, well, it's just a lot of really good projects would never get made if I didn't do that.
Yeah.
If I didn't keep my prices down. So I think I owe people a lot of favors, probably, or they have an investment in it too. Like a producer, and I should mention my longtime producer, Sheldon Steiger, who's the greatest. His particular specialty is electronics and making the piano sound fabulous, and also combining the two. And maybe he has a similar. I think once he's in a project, he has some sort of investment in it too. And so recording space that he uses because he has a job at a school, and it happens to be a fabulous recording space. So I think a lot of how things have been able to get made have been, by being able to have the money there at the right time. And that's been my secret, which is really no kind of secret, I guess. But maybe having good music on the CD and really thinking there's something worth recording certainly enlists people.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the opportunity twice to be kind of peripheral to like some recordings that Judy Sherman has produced, and that's been kind of a cool experience getting to watch her in action. She knows that music cold. She knows it so well. It's amazing. And she hears every little thing and just keeps the everything moving. So
exactly. My sense was at the time when I worked with her, I really hadn't recorded that much at all. And it had always been, and I thought of it as this extremely traumatic experience. I think now one thing about getting more experienced is not really that it gets easier, but you just know the ways in which it's going to be hard, and you can sort of prepare for them better.
Yeah.
And but I remember with her, it was like having somebody pick me up and just usher me right through, take me through the maze or whatever it is I was going through.
Yeah.
It was just like that. And
I felt having like been, a page turner for these two recordings, and seeing her work, that helped to prepare me to go into the studio for my first CD. Or only CD so far, but it allowed me. I felt much more comfortable. I kind of understood how the process would go, and that there would be spots that, okay, this is the difficult spot, and I know that this is going to be the difficult spot, and everything else, this is just how it flows, and this is how it works. It was a really interesting learning experience.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. What sometimes happens, though, is that the parts that you think are going to be this is speaking as a performer.
Oh, yeah.
The parts you think are going to be difficult, you've worked on them so hard, and then they kind of go.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's always some semi-easy part that there's always one moment where you just can't get the take right.
I know it, and we learned in a song of mine. I was singing, Mark was playing, and we discovered that this one section we had been performing wrong. I wrote the thing, and we'd been performing it wrong for 10 years.
That's hysterical.
We never got it right. Not even in the final recording. We just said, this is what it's going to be, and that's fine. You
Well,
know?
I mean, you're the composer. You could just change the definition of what was right, I think.
Yeah.
Who else but you, right? That's very funny. That's really funny. I love that. Well, singing and recording, that's a whole, I recorded, again, we'll talk about it, but Joan LaBarbera's
Mhm.
piece for, which is Storefront Diva.
Mhm.
And I do a little bit of singing, quote, singing in it. And record in a recording situation. I mean, it's one thing to be in a live situation, but because I know how to handle my nerves with my fingers
Mhm.
when I'm nervous, but my voice, I don't know, forget about it. and especially, it's not like Joan is this fabulous world-renowned singer or anything,
Mhm.
and she's up in the booth and I'm thinking I'm out of tune and I can't hear and probably I've got a clogged ear and I'm probably sharp or flat or something. And then I kept fussing around about it. And all of a sudden she gets on the speaker and she goes, Kathy, your voice is fine. It's something we want to change in the piano. And I thought, okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. So let's talk about the new recording, how that came to be, what it is,
Right.
when it's out.
Yeah. And great. Okay. And I'm doing a head count right now. Okay. It's my fourth purely solo CD.
Nice.
And it is the result of a kind of multi-year, multi-composer project I had, which had the working title of Digital Debussy. And but it was a project about Debussy, where I had asked a group of composers to write something for piano or piano and electronics that was inspired by Debussy in some way, and that brought him into the 21st century. And that's all I really said about it. And they could kind of interpret that however they wanted. So, you've got different interpretations. I mean, in some cases, people were just kind of inspired by the aesthetic. And in other cases, people actually kind of lifted something, or I overdubbed something and they processed it, or, had quotations in it, took one of his dance styles, took a theme. So it came out, I came out with, I had about, I think I did a final tally. I had 11 composers wrote pieces. This disc has 7 of them on it.
Okay.
Some of them got recorded elsewhere. One of them got recorded elsewhere. He's by Gene Pritzker. And one of them is part of a larger evening length work called Earth to Kathy, which is by Eric Lyon.
Okay.
And then a couple of them, I think, would only work as DVDs, not as just an audio CD. Okay. So it brought the list down to 7. And it's amazing. I mean, the diversity of responses that I got from people, and the different ways that they went about doing it. So, I mean, would you like to hear specifics? Oh, I can. Oh, people are watching, right? They can.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah,
I can even put it there. That's my head. Yeah, it's almost as big as I am on this screen, isn't it? And I should mention that the person that took this photograph, this is kind of funny because the person that took this photograph is Carolyn Yarnell, who some people know as a composer. Some people know as a photographer or as a visual artist. And she's both. And this was a photograph she took of me when I was in Fullerton, California, doing a concert and a piece of Pamela Madson's last year. It was taken last February. And when I saw it, the way she blurred it like that, I thought, oh yeah, that's the cover.
Yeah, yeah.
And a guy named Mark Wolf, who's worked with New Focus Recordings, which is the label it's coming out on, did a fabulous job of centering it just right and getting the right lettering and fonts and stuff. Anyway, but she's was on my Infusion CD from 2004. I think one of the most wonderful pieces ever written for me is called The Same Sky, and she was the composer of that. So it's kind of funny that she's on this CD as a photographer.
Yeah, nice.
Anyway, so this Debussy thing ended up being called the Debussy effect.
Hmm.
And I want to thank Dan Lapel for that, because many people would know him as a guitarist in Ice and everything. He's a wonderful player, but he's also really good, I think, at this label, and very hands-on, but he has like a lot of helpful bits of advice, but at the same time doesn't interfere in any way that he shouldn't or anything. But he did suggest that I come up with a slightly different name than Digital Debussy, because it sounded a little like Switched on Bach, which is great, but it isn't what the CD is about.
Yeah.
It's really, well, people just took off from there. I mean, I could describe briefly how each person, Joan LaBarbera, I'll go down the line.
Yeah.
Joan LaBarbera has a piece, Storefront Diva, a dreamscape, and it was in fact a dream that Joseph Cornell had about, as in the Cornell boxes, the visual artist, about Debussy playing in a storefront window. And there were two phases to the piece. The first phase was me playing in a storefront window, and the whole set was made, and which you can see credited inside the CD. There are some pictures from it. And I played in a storefront window, and people walked by and looked in, sort of wired in at me playing bits of, she took as her point of inspiration musically, Des Pas sur la Neige, the Footsteps in the Snow, the Debussy Prelude. And but I did some inside the piano bowing with fishing line and some kind of theatrical things and improvisation. And then she took material from that whole event and used it for the actual finished piece, which is what appears on the CD.
Nice.
And so she has a sonic, all the pieces have electronic soundscapes behind them.
Okay.
With the one exception, which I'll get into. Okay, so that's Joan's piece, just in 25 words or less. And the second piece is Matt Marks, and he was inspired by a movie in which Robert Mitchum is singing Leaning on the Everlasting Arms, and also his experience playing Dr. Gradus ad Parnassum as a child. And so it's kind of a surreal, dreamy thing, including some references to those things. And it's Matt Marks. It's really wacky and crazy, and it's trying to be good, but it can't, and it's freaking out. And the third piece is by Eric K.M. Clark, who's an LA composer, and he's known for what he calls sensory deprivation pieces. They're actually sensory oversaturation pieces, I think, and I'd done one of them. And I thought, well, what would a reference to Debussy in that kind of piece be? And what he did was he had a really loud track going while I played this very kind of trance-like, very fast music. And what he finally did, he had me do several performances of it, and he overlayered them. And then when he finished it all, he decided to get rid of the track. It's really funny because the track was so important, and then he got rid of it eventually. So what you hear is me overdubbed playing. And by the way, there's a very cool video made by a New Yorker named Chris Carlone of that piece. And that is a piece, How Things Happen. That happened through a faculty grant at Mannes College of Music, where I teach in the prep. And that was really great because that enabled him to be able to spend the time to make a really wonderful CD or a wonderful video of it. So that's a terrific piece. And then fourth on the CD is by my husband, Randy Wolf, which is called What Remains of a Rembrandt. And it's based on a Jean Genet pamphlet. That's the name, the What Remains of a Rembrandt. But I think his idea was what remains of Debussy after you strip it of its historical context. It's no longer turn of the century salon music, but what is modern about it. And the piece is very trance-like and exotic. You feel like you've gone to some weird landscape in some distant land that doesn't even exist. And But it's got some kind of rhythmic and more boogie aspects of it, and then disappears into this kind of beautiful cloud. And has me, oh, he also included me overdubbing playing my favorite Debussy piece, which everybody will know what it is when they hear that piece. And then there are 2 discs, by the way. That's disc 1. Second disc, Annie Gosfield, Shattered Apparitions of the Western Wind, is based on the Debussy prelude, What the West Wind Saw. And she, it's a, it's very ferocious and virtuosic, a little like how her other music is, but it's more a romantic tradition based, I would say. I think she knew that she wasn't writing it for herself. She was writing it for a pianist. And it makes some references to the Debussy prelude, certainly. She's used some samples that she recorded from Hurricane Sandy. It's all about, it really feels like you're in a storm in that piece. And then there's a kind of almost funereal ending, but not a sad funereal, but just like serious and somber and kind of beautiful, and just kind of marches out. Followed by the only piece that doesn't have electronics, which is Daniel Felsenfeld's piece, which is called Cakewalking. Sorry, Claude. And which is great. I mean, because Danny's such a literary person. I mean, he really could have a TV show or radio show, or he should have a radio show at least, or a TV show. And it's 3 pieces, kind of cakewalks. And 2 of them are fast. The outer ones are fast. And then the inner one is just beautiful, really beautiful. But he was very, it's based on Gollywog's Cakewalk. Cakewalking. And it addresses the political aspects, the politically incorrect aspects of the whole idea of gollywogs, and very much in the last, and it ends with the African national anthem. And so that's very different in a way from other pieces on the disc. And then the very last piece is by Jacob Cooper, who maybe some people know from his piece Timber Brit. And he loves to take pop songs and slow them way down, so that I mean, like serious, like Quaalude kind of slow. And he has such a wonderful ear too. He took the Waltz La Plus Que L'On, and so he entitled it La Plus Que L'On. And so it's very, very slow, but it has some kind of trance-like things, and very beautiful writing, and some electronic processing that comes in, and then a slightly improvisatory end. And he created a masterpiece, as did all the others there. So that's the CD.
Nice. Nice. I've started listening to some of it. I haven't gotten through the whole thing yet. I've been trying to build listening into my day. I realized that for a long time I had sort of stopped. And that's not a good thing for a composer to stop doing. You need to listen to things. So I've been trying to build it. I
guess so. Yeah. I have a lot of trouble getting around to listening to things myself. I have to really sit myself down and say, okay, you are going to listen to this. Maybe it's harder for us. Maybe it interferes with us more or something. Or of course, I'm not a composer, so that, I mean, maybe it's different, but I have a lot of trouble. I'm not one of those people that listens to my iPod continuously on the subway. And
I had a friend who he noticed a number of years ago and made the comment, and this totally makes sense to me. He said that he commented that I'm not a recreational music listener. I don't just pop in the in the earbuds and listen to whatever. I'm a very I listen like with an intent. I listen for research. I do listen to enjoy, certainly, but it's not it's not typically recreational. It's much more, what you are what you eat type. Eating more to become more of that.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Do you have any music? I'm going to ask you, I'm playing interviewer now. Do you have music that you do listen to for recreational purposes?
On the occasion that I do, it's typically Bowie, Rufus Wainwright, What else? Those are the two that really come to mind.
Oh, interesting. Uh-huh. Yeah. I listen to sometimes really mindless techno
Mm.
music, and I love kind of gym class music. I'm really into that.
Yeah, for a while, I would listen. Well, I enjoy like about a half a dozen Lady Gaga songs. The rest, I'm not.
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
I would listen to those at the gym. Go really hard on the elliptical, and then I
Yeah, great elliptical music.
yeah,
Yes.
and when I sort of got sick of that, I said, okay, I've listened to Bad Romance enough, and I started listening to Q2 on the elliptical, and at the one
Oh,
point it was the most bizarre thing. I'm like going really hard listening to Arvo Pärt, that it
oh,
really it doesn't really work. It's
that's
a little
hysterical.
difficult.
I love that. You should make a YouTube of that, doing, people doing really fast, workouts to really zoned out music or something. That's
To
really funny.
have
I
a
should,
recording of Fiorilina, over like
yeah,
somebody like lifting
exactly.
heavy weights.
Right, right, exactly. I also just wanted to, I don't know why I'm bringing this up. It's sort of silly to bring this up but I did want to single out hip hop music. I
Mm,
think for me, that's kind of a midpoint. I mean, it's probably not something I'm going to be emulating or even participating in,
mm.
unfortunately, but I think it's really some of the most interesting and innovative music being made today, actually,
Interesting.
some of it. Anyway, but that's something I enjoy listening to when I'm not. But again, I don't have as much chance as I'd like.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So
it can be tough to make the time for
yeah,
those sorts of
yeah,
things.
yeah, absolutely.
Nice. So we're coming up on the hour here. You mentioned that you have a couple of projects beyond the CD, which, by the way, comes out October 14th. So by the time this comes
Uh-huh.
out on the audio feed, it will have been out officially for a couple of days. But
Right.
for our live viewers, and we've had a few, yay! It will be out this
Uh,
Friday.
Yay. Yes,
So,
and you can
so
get it all sorts of places. Yeah.
yeah, it'll be
And
obviously iTunes, and I'm pretty sure you'll have it on. It'll be on
net,
Amazon and all the
yes,
all the usual places.
Amazon, iTunes, the distributor. It's New Focus Recordings,
Hmm.
and the WC Effect with me on the piano, and I think also Naxos Direct.
Hmm.
Probably Amazon is good place
Yeah,
to go, and
yeah,
it'll be all the places, all those
nice.
places.
I'll make sure to link to it in the show notes so that people just
Oh,
go to
great.
musicpublishingpodcast.com, find episode 22. Um, there'll be links there to you and to that. So do you have any other projects that you've got coming up
Oh,
in the near or distant future that you want to talk about?
let's see. Yeah, I'll just mention a couple, and I'll just throw them out there. I'm, and some of them are in prenatal stages. One in the
Hmm.
prenatal stage is one having to do with migration. I have a really specific idea of where I want to do it in
Hmm.
connection with what, but it's suggested a larger subject of migration in general, and that's something that I'm interested in doing. And I am eventually going to be doing a project with Jeff Mills, having to do with, without saying too much about it, but colonization of a planet,
Oh, interesting.
a new planet, a fictional probably
Hmm.
planet, but colonization of a planet, which is a kind of interesting project to do with somebody who was the godfather of Detroit techno. But yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Nice.
I have several new pieces that are being done I'm going to be doing in the spring. Some Earl Brown, along with some Earl Brown, concert of gifts, pieces that were gifts.
Oh, nice.
And um, I mean, that's some of it. And Nicole Lizet,
Mm.
pieces with video, lots of new things. And please save the date, December 4th.
Mm.
It's the official event in connection with this CD release.
Oh, cool.
It's a little after the release, but I'm going to do something very special with it, with the event. So there will
Nice.
be audience participation that one can get involved with if one wants.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, I'll be sure to share some of that information as it gets a little closer to the day.
Okay, and I'll keep you up on what we're going to do.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So, where can people find you online?
Uh, www.supove.com. And yeah, and in fact, my website, interestingly, is being updated
Yeah,
as we
by
speak by
someone
someone.
who may or may
So,
not be a part of this podcast. Yeah, we'll be
right, absolutely.
unveiling a new site for Kathy in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah. And
So
in the meantime, as it'll say on the website right now, you can go to you go to Facebook, go to
mhm,
Supove, and from there you can find Exploding Piano
mhm.
by searching Exploding Piano too. That's pretty up to date. I always throw things up on my professional page that I'm up to. So
Nice.
that's a good way, and you can Google various, you'll get various entries too.
Mhm.
Yeah, and look
Nice.
forward to hearing from anyone. So write me if you go to these places.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Awesome. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Dennis.
Before we sign off, is there anything that we I just hit the microphone. Anything that you want to talk about briefly that you think composers or performers should think about with their careers or think about in general? That maybe something that's been in your life, that's been in your career, that you think that might other people might benefit from?
Yeah, for some reason, this is coming to mind. If you want to be in the field and you want this career, hang in there,
Hmm.
because that's the most important. I mean, that's the most important thing about any endeavor in life. And we
Hmm.
were talking earlier about the weight and that sort of thing. Is whether or not one can achieve something is all about whether one is willing to hang in there, because
Hmm.
a failure is really just something on the way to potential success,
Hmm.
unless one changes one's mind, but that's
Yeah,
different. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I guess I would just say that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the only failure is when you stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that, yeah, exactly.
And
That's what I would say.
yeah, you also have to like decide that it's a failure. Sometimes stopping is the smart thing.
Right.
but
Exactly.
but yeah,
Sometimes one has no choice, or that is the thing to do.
mhm,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, if it's a failure, just keep moving forward and
Hmm.
run with it. Cool,
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
So thank you
So
very
thank you.
much. Yeah, and
Thank you.
hang out for a second. We'll go back to the green room. I'm just going to do a little bit of outro stuff here.
Okay.
Thank you everybody for listening and for our live viewers today. It's nice to have you here. I saw some comments from Ian on the YouTube page. Wonderful, wonderful. By the way, Kathy, Ian says that he loves your recordings. Put that
Oh,
in the comments there. Um,
great.
so anybody, if you're enjoying the show, then I encourage you to go to iTunes, rate, review, so that we could, people, that social proof is really important for getting word out about the podcast, so that more people can benefit from conversations like today with Kathy, and share with your friends. If you want to repost on Twitter and Facebook, I always appreciate getting that little bit of a boost to have more people know what's going on here, and hopefully learn some stuff along the way. And so thank you very much, and I will talk to you next time.